At the beginning of time, when the power of Melkor was still so great that he opposed all the other Valar, many of the Maiar were attracted by his power. Others sided with Melkor, believing false promises or being seduced by gifts. The most monstrous of Melkor's minions were Valaraukar, mighty demons, fiery scourges, otherwise called Balrogs, demons of horror. Their appearance was similar to the appearance of Melkor in the days of his fall, and they were his personal guard and bodyguards. Hello everyone, this is Story Hunter. In the last video I told you about Legolas, one of the 9 members of the Fellowship of the Ring. You can find a link to this video in the tips or via the link in the description. In this video I will tell you about Balrogs, fiery demons of giant growth from among the Maiar. Who are they? How did they appear? What happened to them? Thank you for your comments, ideas for new videos, likes, and subscriptions. This really motivates me to create new videos. During that severe war between the Valar and Melkor for the fate of the elves, when the armies of Utumno were defeated, Melkor called his Balrogs to help. However, Manwë, the great leader of the Valar, crushed them, and Melkor was completely defeated. The captive Melkor was taken by the Valar to their holy lands of Valinor, but the search for the Balrogs and Sauron was in vain. They hid in the ruins of the impregnable fortress of Angband. In 1495, G.D. Melkor, together with the spider demon Ungoliant, fled from Valinor, already bearing the name Morgoth. When they reached Lamath and Ungoliant demanded the promised reward, Melkor refused to fulfill his part of the agreement. Then Ungoliant became angry, and she became so huge that Melkor could not overcome her. She entangled the Lord of Darkness in her web and began to choke him. Hearing the terrible cry of their master, the Balrogs came to Melkor's aid. With their fiery whips, they cut through the web and drove Ungoliant away. In 1497 AD, the Noldor elves arrived in Beleriand in pursuit of Morgoth, and they won a quick victory over his orcs at Dagor Nuin Gileath. The king of the Noldor, Fëanor, breaking away from the main army, pursued the remnants of the Dark Lord's army to the very walls of Angband. Melkor was ready to attack, and the Balrogs came out against Fëanor and Dor Dedalo, surrounding him with several friends who soon died. Since Fëanor was superior in strength and stamina to all the children of Eru, he was able to withstand all the demons at once for a long time, and alone, although he was shrouded in their fire. In the end, the Balrogs managed to crush him, inflicting many mortal wounds, from which Fëanor died shortly after the battle. In 455 CE, the Balrogs were the leaders of Morgoth's army at the Battle of Dagor Bragollach. In 472 PE, in the Battle of Nirnaeth Arnoediad, the Balrogs were thrown into battle by Morgoth as the last reserves, along with werewolves and dragons. The High King of the Noldor, Fingon, entered into battle with Gothmog, Lord of the Balrogs and Commander-in-Chief of Morgoth's army. The elf was not inferior to Gothmog, but during the duel a second Balrog crept up to the king from behind and wrapped him in a fiery whip. Thanks to this, Gothmog was able to kill Fingon. In 510 PE, during the fall of Gondolin, Gothmog was the leader and commander-in-chief of the troops of Angband. During the capture of the city, Gothmog knocked down Tuor, the son of Huor, but Ecthelion, the lord of the House of Fountains, prevented the demon from finishing off his fallen enemy. Gothmog knocked the weapon out of his hand, but Ecthelion plunged the tip of his helmet into the Balrog's chest, after which both fell into the deep city fountain, where Gothmog found his death along with the elf. Soon after this, the fugitives from captured Gondolin were attacked by a detachment of orcs led by a Balrog. Lord Glorfindel fought the Balrog, but in the end, both opponents fell into the abyss and died. Thanks to Glorfindel's sacrifice, the fugitives were able to escape. Not much time passed when a detachment of orcs, led by a Balrog, flew in to escape from captive Gondolin. Lord Glorfindel entered into a duel to the death with this terrible creature driven by darkness. The battle was so fierce that both opponents eventually fell into a bottomless abyss, where they met their deaths. However, thanks to Glorfindel's self-sacrifice, the fugitives managed to survive and escape death. Finally, at the end of the Battle of Wrath, Morgoth, having exhausted his last strength, sent his Balrogs into a decisive battle against the forces of the Valar. The battle was merciless, and the Balrogs were completely destroyed. Only one of them managed to survive, hiding in the bowels of the earth under the misty mountains, where he sank into a deep sleep for many centuries. In 1980 TE, the gnomes of Moria, in search of Mithril, reached the depths of the misty mountains and inadvertently awakened the last Balrog. The demon killed the king of Moria, Durin IV, and in 1981 TE and his son, Nain the Fur. The dwarves called this ancient, unknown evil the Curse of Durin. The dwarves fled Moria, and even after winning the war with the orcs who captured Moria, the dwarves were afraid to return because of the Balrog. In 2989, Te Balin tried to recapture Moria by recapturing the kingdom from the orcs. But in 2994, he was killed by an orc, and his entire squad was destroyed by the Balrog along with the orcs. In 3019, a Balrog attacked the Fellowship of the Ring as they passed through Moria. In a mortal fight, Gandalf the Grey managed to throw his opponent off the top of Zirak Zigil. Thus, the last of Morgoth's Balrogs was destroyed. Balrogs were fiery demons shrouded in a cloud of darkness. In terms of physique, they resembled a man of enormous stature, but had a fiery essence, walked shrouded in thick shadows, had a flaming fiery mane, and long, strong arms. Presumably they had wings, although this cannot be said with complete certainty. Great Balrogs are not as huge as the giants of legend, but their height was twice that of the Eldar. And the height of the Eldar, I'll tell you, rarely fell below 196 centimeters. The main weapon of the Balrogs were fiery whips. Gothmog, in addition to the scourge, carried a black axe, and the Balrog, nicknamed Durin's Curse, carried a fiery sword. Tolkien changed his mind about the number of Balrogs over time, which creates controversy between his early and later works dealing with the world of Middle-earth. Early texts speak of hordes of Balrogs, and that they were destroyed by the hundreds. The early concept of the Balrogs presents them as less terrible and, in any case, more vulnerable than later. There were hundreds of them, and Tuor and the Gondothlim killed them in large numbers. Thus, 5 of them fell under the blows of Drumborlag, the great axe of Tuor. 3 from the sword of Ecthelion, and 4 dozen were killed by the warriors of the royal house. In early versions of the Legendarium, Balrogs were the man-made creations of Morgoth and were superior in strength to wingless dragons. However, Christopher Tolkien suggested the greater vulnerability of the Balrogs in the early texts of the Legendarium, as can be seen all the way back to the Quenta of the Noldorinwa, 1930, Volume 4 of the History of Middle-earth, which states, "There, the first battle took place. A great many orcs and Balrogs perished there, and not a single legend can tell about the valor of Feanor and his sons." Apparently, while writing The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien changed his concept of the power and nature of the Balrogs. So Gandalf on the bridge of Khazad-dûm says to his companions, "This is an enemy that none of you can cope with." In later texts, the Balrogs become Maiar, who side with evil. Their number decreases and their power increases. Now fights between elves and Balrogs, even in case of victory, ended in the death of the Balrog's opponent.